What's up, guys? The Idiot here. All right, so this is the kind of mid-year, late summer kind of final build in 2024, and I would like to say it's final. Most of my cables used to give people OCD problems, and they're still pretty messy. They're much better than they used to be. They're kind of tied up and out of the way, but this rig kept changing positions and doing all sorts of things. So what the purpose of this video today is to kind of show you how I figured out how I did it, kind of answer some questions, maybe some hacks that you guys can use to help. Again, these screens are 375-inch TVs, so they basically, they completely cover your peripherals when you're actually in there. But I wanted to show you some of the cool hacks because I could not put the TrackIR at the top of the TV nor at the bottom, and plus everything would be blocking it. Tobii eye tracker I tried to mount here at this one point, but it either was too close or just didn't work the way I wanted it to do, so I just kind of gave up on it. Now this is the TrackIR, and here's the cool first hack that I can give you. This is actually because it's got, a mounting magnet that usually goes on this kind of little claw thing. It never stayed on any of these things. And I also needed it to mount on the left side because my head is so close that it would have to be on the left side of the rig for the headset to match up to right here. So my head is like basically in the center. This is off to the side, so it's actually perfectly centered, so it works out really good. So what I ended up doing is I basically took a couple of magnets and then put them in some double-sided tape and then put them on top of the left MFD. And then I just used a bunch of individual additional magnets to adjust the height. And so it's kind of still free-floating and it kind of jostles around. And again, this is a motion rig, so it can move a little bit, but that's the best solution. And a couple things that actually changed it. This is a racing seat. It's one of the NRGs. It's just a basic car seat. It's got the handle to go back and forth, but what ended up happening is I've also got the shaker seat, and it's got the 4 pads right here in 4.1, or it's just 4 surrounds, basically. It's the fronts and the backs. But it's great for vibrations and, guns and landing gear, so you can tell that you actually triggered it. But it actually, when you sit on it long enough, it gets really hot because it's always vibrating, and it's also pretty uncomfortable because it just feels like you're sitting on 4 hockey pucks. And this is a pretty stiff chair to begin with. So I got on Amazon just this kind of memory foam type of, cover for your car seat. And I've also got like this memory foam back pad that just really helps, for long durations. But this made all the difference in the world. This actually makes it feel like a comfortable car seat. So I can easily play for a couple hours and not have any kind of fatigue or anything like that. So that's hack number 2. This made all the difference in the world. I would definitely recommend. You can still feel the vibrations plenty through it, but they're a little bit toned down. Okay, so that being out of the way, this being out of the way, how we got some of these mountings for just even for this, I just got the Horizon 2, which from Winwing, I'm very happy with their company, their products. I mean, it's definitely made out of more of a plastic type versus my old Throttle, which was the Warthog for the A10. But I mean, really the configurations, the switches, they all feel very good. There was one little minor flaw. This light did not, I think one of the tacks of the LED strips, I think it's just hanging. You can, when you knock it, it kind of vibrates and whatever. So I could probably pull that thing apart and get to it and like stick it back with some glue or something, but I'm not really going to make a big deal about that. But anyway, so how I mounted this, because of the way the frame works on this DOF H6 rig, there was a couple of goofy things. Originally, this was all the way up here, and your sitting position with your arm was just like way up here instead of a natural comfortable position like this, like at a kind of a 45-degree angle. So that's what I had to do. So what I did is I couldn't find any exact screws that were going to be long enough, so I got these. They're about 18-inch bolts. And they're pretty thick. I think I can't remember what the gauge is, but they're really, really thick bolts. And what I did is I got a bunch of the washers that fit through them. And then I got these extender couplers for these. And these are for massive, massive versions of these bolts. I just used them as simple extenders because if I've got all this weight sitting there, I need something that's going to hold on to this. So I just put washers in between them. Stuck them through and then got them at the right distance. It was actually just one plate before, and then I actually got an additional plate, and then I just kept these things through. I know these things look like you can impale somebody, but if I ever did want to move this back just a slight bit more, I could put a few more washers or another couple of nuts or something like that in between it, and I could just adjust it. That's why I'm not going to cut these off because they don't get in the way once my feet is on the chair. So that's how I did that. But to the mounting bracket, I had to do a couple of things that were also a little weird because this thing came up, and you can see underneath this, the only way I could get the mounting bolts to hold on to these things is they would stick up, and then this thing would be smashed. The bottom of the unit would be smashed, so there's no clearance. So you can see this. This is actually 1/2-inch copper from just your supply lines in your house. I can do plumbing work and electrical and all sorts of different types of stuff. So I actually had the tools and the stuff just sitting in the garage. So I just took this and just put little risers so the screws could go through them. And even on this situation, I didn't have to deal with it with the other throttle, but see how this thing's in the way? So I had to get a little creative. So I put a couple of washers in between it just to reduce the width of this. And so I could just put the bolt underneath it, so I reversed it. So this is the way it used to be because there was nothing over the top of it. But then I just gave it enough clearance and put a little bit of tape on the top of it. Doesn't even need it because the clearance is perfectly fine with this. And I just did all the way around. Had to do the same thing here. But that's how I had to retrofit that. So you have to get kind of creative when you're mounting all these type of things. You can solve the problem, and most of the stuff is just kind of in your house. And so we'll come over here. Very similar type of thing. This rig is actually just a piece of 2x4, very similar to over there. It's just mounted directly onto this. I was able to use a couple of I used Velcro, but it always fell over. So I just used a couple of zip ties, and that definitely kept it in place. And so this were all the main pieces to turn on the circuitry. So I got a couple of bolts running through there. It's just like the other side over here. And then from there, I've just got these they're like for cabinets. They're just for the little supports on the corners and stuff like that at the top of the cabinets. So I use that to mount just a piece of, this is actually a plank for filler that we use when we're building kitchens and cabinets and stuff like that. It's just a filler between that. I just kept it. And I used to have another completely weird system that was kind of off to the side and the buddy fox and whatever, and I got rid of that, put this here. And how I mounted it, I just took a couple of regular nuts just for spacers, so I could get underneath it. I can only make 3 points of contact here, and they're just, kind of tied in with a couple of washers and bolts, but you can see there's only 3 points of contact here, here, and here. The reason for that is because the other hole that would be right here would be sitting on top of that bracket. So what I just did is I just took the nuts, put them underneath them, glued them together, and just kept them as an additional spacer, but it's extremely solid. Now you may be asking, why in the world did I take these throttles off? And they failed. So I don't need a double throttle, but this really is cool because I still get to use it as a zoom, still use it for flaps if I want, get to use these as eject buttons, whatever I want to do. But essentially these switches pretty much are mapped to be the startup for every aircraft. So you've got your engine start, you got your APUs, you got your detents off to idle, and you get your battery, pass-through, bleed air, whatever you need. It's already mapped to several different aircraft. So when I put it in, it still worked. And there's a whole section of stuff that I did to make this work. You can't just take the throttles off. You've got to take the circuit board from the throttle, which is in there. Totally different video, but that's how that worked. Let's see. All right, the last thing for here, the Ava base is pretty basic. This is where it was before. It's just a normal kind of a stick that goes in there, and I can raise it and lower it and whatever, but I didn't want to get the extension on there because obviously, look at this. When I push this all the way forward, it was knocking into that bracket. So I actually literally, I had to cut that, I just had to saw that thing off just so I could get this to have free clearance and everything. So this is, kind of one of those things where you had to figure it out. This is a lot closer than it used to be, this whole MFD. And the reason for that is because, again, these mounting arms, and it's kind of hard to see from this angle, so if I can go over here, you can see how they're offset. So this one is here, and then the other one is kind of like over here, and they're kind of crossing each other. So what ended up happening with that is there was the bolt that was holding onto this plate that would have normally mount it to, but the way that the wind wing mounting brackets work with this is they need something pretty thick. And you can see this is about 3/4 inch so it's about 1.5 inches for right here. And it's perfect for the clamping mechanism. If you clamp it onto anything thinner, it starts to warp the plastic and it will break those things off. So you have to be very careful. So the thicker, the better. But what I ended up having to do, this whole unit used to be about right here, which made it a hell of a lot easier to get into the rig. As you can see, there's almost no clearance between the seat and that. So it's very difficult to get your foot in there, no matter which side you enter it from. But the mounting mechanism for these 3 panels are very, very solid now. The reason you see it shaking is because that's actually the mounting of the entire thing shaking. So that's the whole rig. You can see even the everything's moving. So I had to move that back, bolted this down there, just cut these two pieces so they would be, be enough for this, the center, and this over there. Now, where it gets unique is how I mounted this Buddy Fox for the A10 panel. This is not the Etsy version. This is the original Buddy Fox. It was $170, but it's absolutely amazing. It's the best button clicks and all that kind of jazz. But it used to be mounted over. Let me go show you this kind of stupid stuff. But I had this block right here that was kind of sitting off to the side. You can see the Velcro. That's the top piece for the Velcro for the Buddy Fox. But this used to be sitting kind of an angle here. And it wasn't bad, but it just didn't make any sense to me. So I was like, well, how am I going to mount it to the left? I can't, mount it underneath this. My knuckles would scrape. I can't put it right here. I'd bang into it. And, there's just not enough clearance. It would be cool to put it down there, but I couldn't get it to mount. So I have this really, really, really high-end Velcro. It's not even Velcro. I think it's called hook and loop. And I put 7 squares so they're facing each other. And when you push this stuff down, I'm telling you, you could not pull this thing off without breaking it. I mean, it's that solid. So when I push on it, I mean, it's flexing because the whole rig is moving. But I mean, it's not like bending back and forth. So it's super, super solid. That leaves these guys. Okay. So the ICP panel originally came with the harness to where you could flip it back. And that's how they designed it. And I loved it for the most part. But I really don't fly the F-16 very much. Very much got into helicopters lately, and I'm more of a Hornet pilot, as you can see. But I did like the panel. It was really cool. Good price too, $160 for all the features that it's got. But it was never being used. It was always back behind this thing, and so it was useless for whatever button boxes and stuff like that. But pushing it here, it stuck out really. It was just kind of goofy to me. I just didn't like the system. So I thought, what if there was a way? This guy used to be over here. It's kind of sucks. So when I was like taking off, I'd have to take my hand off of the control to lift the gear and put up the flaps and do all that kind of stuff. That was a bad way to do it. So I ended up saying, well, let's put it over there. So this is how I mounted it. I took one of the wind wing brackets. Okay, this is the one that's already on this particular unit, and I got some nylon spacers on Amazon, just a spacer kit, and it was good that they came in multiple sizes because I would have had to cut these down. I got some bolts that were kind of like, I think they were 2 feet long, and I just cut them down to what I needed them to be. And then this is just kind of this weird bracket that I found in my garage, just sitting there, some screws that were already there, and all I did was I got this to mount to this side, because they have a mounting solution for this where you could clamp this takeoff panel to a desk or whatever, so they already got the screws in here. So I mounted this normally to that, so that's attached to this. Then I use these spacers to give it stability so it doesn't wobble back and forth and bend, and then I just clipped on the top of it and I just bent this over. So you never see it from the front, it looks ugly from the back, but I mean, it's a perfect little mounting solution, and I did the exact same thing over here, just like that. So just those nylon spacers made all the difference in the world, and I just made it really, really solid. So I kept everything out of the way, and everything turns on, everything lights up. As far as the rig being attached, I put a couple of things that's on the floor. Like, for example, my computer I put like on some wheels and just a piece of board just in case, because this is a basement. We got 2 furnaces, we got one in there, we got one in here. And if they ever did leak, I just don't want this thing sitting on the floor. Same thing with the motors for the H6. I've got them on a couple of 2x4s just to keep them off the ground. It'd be a mess no matter what. But I guess that's about it. I mean, this is pretty simple. That's just, the TPR pedals. They're kind of mounted directly onto it with those 2 bolts, and they're really heavy, so you don't have to worry about that. This is not my best solution. I would have probably foregone the cost of having these blowers for the rig. They're just not, they're kind of more annoying than anything, so I don't really recommend them. Some people may love them, swear by them in racing or whatever. It's interesting, but what ends up happening is you just get so much air flowing on you. If it's blowing directly on you, it gets in your eyes, starts to dry them out eventually. And then they make a lot of noise. There's a lot of air noise and a lot of hose noise and stuff like that. So it kind of takes you out of the immersion of the flight. It just feels weird. So it's okay for some people, but it's just not the greatest. Last thing is these speakers right here. One of the bummers when I have somebody come over here and they're trying the rig, you know, they put on these great Arctic Steel headphones and they sound amazing in there, but to everybody else it's dead silent. Nobody can hear anything. They don't hear the engine noise, they don't hear the flying of the deck, all that kind of stuff. So I got a couple of these studio monitors, they're powered, and I just got to run them into this really cheap old Lexicon interface. And so what I do when I run DCS for, you know, everybody else so they can get the experience, the headphones still play all the in-cockpit sounds, like the voiceovers, you know, SRS, anything that you're going to hear from those type of things. So you still hear it through that, but the main engine sounds, the explosions, the missiles, kabooms, firing, all that stuff comes through these speakers. So it sounds really, really good. And it's just an additional fun thing to be able to do. But that's about it. So hopefully this gave you some good tips on kind of how to overcome some you know, some fabrication issues or what to do with this. I mean, like I said, if I needed this higher, I can just stack some more of the magnets right there, and I can just adjust the height by that. So that's a kind of a cool little thing that you can fix. You know, if you want to mount your Buddy Fox or some other panel, you can use this hook and loop Velcro type stuff. You can take your ICP panels, get a couple of spacers, and you can mount your rig to each other and have that all off the floor if this is something that you have an issue with. And then if you needed to extend away from your panels, you can, you know, use some nuts and washers and all sorts of different types of things. I mean, realistically, instead of cutting the pipe, because that was a kind of a clever thing that I thought about originally, but I thought I'm not going to do that, and I don't even have the tool with me. It's at my job site. I decided to say, screw it. Let me just go ahead and use some nuts, which I had a ton of. And so most of the stuff you have in your house, I bet you, if you've got like, you know, you got any tools for working on cars, and you got like a whole bunch of nuts and bolts and stuff just sitting around, you'd be surprised what you could fabricate. This is totally MacGyvered. But yeah, all the rigs, you know, I built for the TV stands, these are just 2x4s and some old parts from cabinets that we never used. And they're pretty much the same build all the way around. That's it. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll put up another video of the latest startup and the configuration so you guys can see that. Have a good one.